Hey, you're listening to Rising into Mindful Motherhood. I'm your host, Dr. Katie Wood. I'm a barefoot mama bear, pharmacist, integrative fertility health coach, and lover of all things nature and animals. I'm on a mission to have intentional conversations about the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to fertility, pregnancy, postpartum, and beyond. My mindful guest and I will be talking about struggles, wins, natural wellness, and how we grow and transform as we enter motherhood. My background in healthcare has shown me how broken our medical system is. My own struggles to become pregnant has shown the lack of support for mamas to be, the lack of guidance for women to have a nourishing and vibrant pregnancy, the isolation, mom guilt, and all the things we hold after bringing baby earthside. I want this platform to be a place where women can feel connected, safe, and supported to share and hear their stories. A place to use our voice to discuss and advocate about what we need and deserve as mothers. So let's dive in, shall we? Hello and welcome to Rising into Mindful Motherhood. Today I'll be talking with Kelly Riley, a mother of two, and both a nutritional therapy and restorative wellness practitioner. She specializes in women's health and has a deep passion for helping women overcome hypothyroidism, anxiety, hair loss, weight gain, and low energy. She loves helping clients to get back to feeling like themselves again. Today, we're going to be talking about nutritional therapy and fertility, specifically gut health, digestion, mineral balance, and blood sugar regulation, and really just how our overall gut health impacts our fertility and just overall well-being. So welcome, Kelly. I'm super excited to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's dive in. So I would love to just hear a little bit about your journey, your background, and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. Like you said, I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner and restorative wellness practitioner, and I own a practice called Foundations Nutritional Wellness, which is based in Westfield, Indiana. I see clients both locally in person and virtually all over the US. Like you said, I do specialize in women's health, and I have a passion for helping women overcome specific issues that I dealt with personally and have experience dealing with. I love helping clients get back to feeling like themselves again. And I'm currently working on building a self-paced course, hoping to launch it sometime soon. Growing up, I had a lot of health challenges. I was extremely overweight. I struggled with PCOS. I had gut issues. When I became an adult, I struggled with PCOS, Hashimoto's hypothyroidism, anxiety, stubborn weight, and hair loss. And it was not until when I dealt with my nutrition, cleaned up my diet, and healed my gut that I was able to reverse my symptoms. I now don't have any signs of PCOS, which is amazing. I don't have thyroid antibodies. I was able to conceive my kids without help, and my hair grew back, and I don't have anxiety. So I feel like a totally different person. Now that I'm a mom, I really view nutrition from another lens because my oldest has ADHD and anxiety. But by fine-tuning her nutrition and healing her gut, she's medication free, and people are often surprised that she has these conditions because she doesn't have many symptoms at all. So my work has really come full circle for me, and I'm really passionate about helping others break free of these symptoms through foundations of nutritional therapy, which are a whole foods diet, hydration, digestion, mineral balancing, blood sugar balancing, fatty acids, and then collectively sleep, stress, and movement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's amazing that you've been able to really reverse all of those conditions because it's so common in America today for women to be dealing with these. And a lot of times in Western medicine, we just slap a Band-Aid on it with medication. I mean, I saw that working in retail pharmacy. And then I'm just in love and amazed that you were able to get your child off of medications because that was one factor that really broke my heart in retail. was just constantly filling all of these medications for these children, and then also filling other medications for the side effects that, the medications are causing. And I love that you were able to correct that for her just by, looking at her nutrition and all of that. So amazing.
Thanks. Yeah, I always compare it to having a piece of glass in your arm. And a lot of times the pharmaceuticals are putting a Band-Aid or a bandage over the glass to stop the bleeding, but you're not taking the source out.
Mm-hmm.
So I really try to look at root causes and see, okay, why is this happening in the body, and understanding the physiology of the body and what should happen. And then, using assessments, functional lab tests to determine what is going wrong and how to correct that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So what would you say, kind of in like a broader viewpoint, like why is gut health so important to our general health, but then also fertility?
So it's a big question, but gut health in general is really, really keystone in terms of looking at the body as a whole, because it has a broad, far-reaching impact on the whole body.
Mm-hmm.
We know that there's a lot that we don't know about the gut, and the research is just always evolving. They're discovering new things all the time, which is phenomenal. But we do know that 70% of the immune system is in the gut. So if you have autoimmune issues, an overreactive or underreactive immune system, that can be directly tied to the gut. In terms of supporting the body, if we're not absorbing what we eat, we are lacking energy, we're lacking nutrients. Having nutrient deficiencies can have so many consequences, especially when you're trying to build an egg or sperm or build a baby, from those things. The body knows when we're lacking things and when something maybe won't turn out so correctly. People have a lot of gut symptoms that they know, and then there's also symptoms that they don't know. So the obvious gut symptoms, their bowel movements are not regular. They're bloating before, all day long, after a meal. They have heartburn, reflux. They have allergies like hay fever, sinus congestion that can be tied to the gut, stomach pain, regular gas, feeling tired all the time, sleep disturbances. If you eat a high sugar diet, or if you've had unintentional weight changes, those are like some obvious gut symptoms, but like the not so obvious ones are hormonal issues and unexplained infertility. Yeah. Mood changes, including depression, anxiety, chronic fatigue, trouble focusing, like in my daughter's situation with the ADHD, brain fog, poor memory, headaches, chronic yeast infections, frequent illnesses or colds or flu, or you never get sick all the time. It's like two opposite ends of the spectrum, but they both go back to the gut. Constant cravings, skin issues, joint pain. Those are more of the not obvious gut related symptoms, but they definitely are tied to the gut. Mm-hmm. Gut health is a big, big topic, and it refers to basically the state of your gastrointestinal system and the microbiome living in it. So we know that there are trillions of microorganisms living in the GI tract, and that microbiome influences bodily functions like digestion, immune function, blood sugar regulation, and even fertility. So the microbiome has a big impact on hormonal balance, which I'm sure your listeners are aware of this, but it's critical for fertility. So estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, those are all tied to reproductive health, as you know, but imbalances in these hormones can affect ovulation, sperm production, the ability to conceive. So gut health impacts both women and men when you're talking about fertility too. Most people have a compromised gut because of our lives. Unless you're living in a bubble with a pristine diet, consuming like perfect water, which this doesn't exist, you have some level of leaky gut. And that is what we call intestinal permeability. So in our intestines, there are tight junctions that should be stuck together. But when we consume things like Advil, take other medications, alcohol, refined sugar, exposed to toxins, even drinking tap water, and even in the air that we breathe, these substances can get through our intestinal wall because those tight junctions open up. And this can lead to a whole cascade of effects on the body. So instead of these toxins being eliminated properly, they're absorbed into the bloodstream. And then the immune system is stimulated. And before you know it, you're reacting to foods. You're having all sorts of symptoms that you don't understand where they're coming from. And that can be tied back to leaky gut. And the lining of the gut is 1 cell thick. And that's why it's such a prevalent problem. And that is why it's so, I don't want to say it's easy to happen, but our gut lining is so thin and so fragile that it happens easily. So when the gut is compromised, we know hormone production is compromised. We know that the immune system gets turned on, and inflammation can happen too. So chronic inflammation, and I'll call it an imbalanced immune system response, that those can impact fertility. And the gut plays a pretty big role in regulating inflammation and immune system function. And so when the gut is unhealthy, it can lead to increased inflammation and immune dysregulation. Too much inflammation can cause huge amounts of oxidative damage in cells. And the largest cell in the body is a woman's egg cell. So it's targeted pretty easily with inflammation. They have also found in recent research, and I don't know if you've seen any of this, but that recurrent miscarriages can be tied back to abnormal gut permeability, which is leaky gut, what I was just talking about, because of the inflammation in the body. So basically the body freaks out and is going into survival mode. The inflammation can also affect progesterone levels by lowering those levels, which, as we know, are so important to sustain a pregnancy. And autoimmune issues can also pop up. I mentioned this earlier, but the inflammation can cause anti-sperm antibodies in a woman's body, and that prevents fertilization. So it's kind of a pretty big deal when it comes to the hormone and inflammation side of things.
And it's definitely not something that's commonly even looked at or considered in typical Western medicine or conventional health spaces, which is so sad. And it makes me think of my fertility journey as well, because I was on birth control for 13 years before we started trying, which we know birth control can affect your gut. And it can deplete you of a lot of nutrients. And my OB at the time was like, yeah, you can stop your birth control and start trying in the same month. And I recall, like, when I was on birth control, like, I was constipated all the time. I probably only went to the bathroom, like, if I was lucky, 2 times a week. And That's awful. Like that is so bad. Um, so it's just wild to me how like unaware a lot of doctors are about how important gut health is. I mean, I do think that the research, like you said, is really evolving and coming out like so fast and so much about the connection to the brain, connection to hormones, all of these things. But um, I had actually experienced candida. It was a year after I had my daughter, and I was very much focused on what I was eating because I was still breastfeeding. But the functional doctor I was working with, I had had traveler's diarrhea twice in the past, in Peru and Costa Rica. And she had said, like, yeah, like that's just completely damaging your gut lining, like right there. So I'm just thinking like that on top of the birth control and just so many things. And it does, I think one thing I like to remind people is it takes time to heal. Like there's not an easy button that you can just press and just take a drug and your gut is better. Like my digestion is much better. I go to the bathroom every single morning. I'm very regular. I mean, even I know it's recommended to go more than once a day, but it takes time. And sometimes I'll eat foods and I'll feel bloated and gassy. And I loved your post the other day about what should your farts smell like, and it was like you shouldn't be farting. So it's
Yeah.
just so funny, and all of those things are just so normalized, but they're not.
Totally. Gut healing is a process, and there are obviously supplements that help people
Mm-hmm.
heal their guts, but it does take time. And we have to remember that we did not get here overnight or in a month. You know, it's been up into this point of you living your life, however many years. So it will take time to regenerate and for the body to get back in balance. But I really believe that when you understand what your body needs, you can fully support it so that it can do what it knows to do. Because I really do believe that by removing barriers, we can provide the body support and people heal every day from these
Mm-hmm.
issues. But I'm not surprised. Hormonal birth control is so damaging in so many different ways. I
Mm-hmm.
see a lot of clients with candida with
Yeah.
hormonal birth control. Um, it increases the body's iron stores, and iron feeds pathogens, including yeast, parasites. So a lot of individuals deal with when they're on birth control, but also when they're coming off of it, they notice these symptoms coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you have traveled outside the US or outside your home and had an issue with traveler's diarrhea, those guys can stick around and cause dysbiosis, which
Mm-hmm.
is an imbalance of good and bad bacteria in the gut. They should be transient, they should move out. But for some individuals, their digestive function is compromised, and it can cause huge issues for years that
Mm-hmm.
people have no idea. So I do love using different like stool tests to see what is really happening in somebody's gut, because you're not questioning the protocol at that point. You understand exactly what somebody needs
Mm-hmm.
to in order to balance the gut. But I'm big with actually educating my clients how to prevent it in the future. So people will come to me and they'll say, I did a stool test with a functional doctor. I felt better, but a couple years later, here I am again dealing with another, it's the same situation. And oftentimes it's because they didn't understand why it happened in the first place. So, for your example, you can't avoid drinking water necessarily if you go to Costa Rica, but your stomach acid should be sufficient enough to stop that from
Mm-hmm.
happening. So, our stomach acid is our first line of defense, and most people are deficient in adequate stomach acid because of processed foods, the standard American diet, rushing through meals, stress. We have a lot of things working against us in our world today. And we have to be very conscious of trying to relax, trying to get into that parasympathetic state to make stomach acid.
Mm-hmm.
So with that said, understanding, I guess, how your body should work and then consciously putting those things into place, I find is helpful for clients to have good digestion after working with me versus saying, okay, well, I need another stool test because I'm back to where I started,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense. So, but yeah, we need stomach acid to stop that. And then your elimination pathways have to be open. So like you said, you were pooping twice a week or however many, not every day necessarily. I see that a lot also. And that's how we get rid of toxins, through sweating, urinating, and pooping.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not going every day, your hormones are getting reabsorbed into your body, toxins are getting reabsorbed, and we really need to get that stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another big thing that I see in clients.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because that's definitely something I touch upon with my clients as well. Like, that's a way of, like, our bodies have natural detoxification pathways. We just have to support them. Because I have had, some people tell me when they're struggling with fertility, oh, I'll just do a 3-day detox. But it's like, that is not, and I used to have that same thought process, like, back in the day as well, like, oh, I'll just do this detox after vacation or something like that. But again, that's just a very quick band-aid that's going to be ripped off very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Especially after you go back to, like, old habits or whatever it may be. So I love all the things you brought up. Thank you for giving such a detailed explanation, because the gut is very complicated, but it's very important, and it has to do with so many bodily processes that, like you mentioned, we don't even know about yet. I mean, we're just still learning. I mean, I feel like I saw it somewhere where they even consider the gut to be like a whole nother brain, like, in the body. It's like the second brain or something like that.
Yeah.
But I would love to talk about mineral balance and how that can play a role in gut health, fertility, and yeah, just what that looks like, because that's not talked about very often that I see.
Yeah.
I'd love to learn from you.
Yeah, I could probably do a whole podcast on mineral balancing.
Well, blow my mind, and maybe we'll do
It
that. We'll
is
do a second one.
really cool. Yeah, we should. So this is something that I was introduced to on a podcast, actually. Are you familiar with Wendy Myers?
I don't think so.
She's like a natural health expert. She has a great podcast. You should check it out. She talked to, I think it was Christina Moses. They're with Moses Nutrition, about hair tissue mineral analysis. And this was before I was a practitioner, and I was searching for answers for my daughter. I was just looking for anything to help her with anxiety, with her ADHD. So long story short, I heard about HTMA, and I thought, I want to do that. And it is a test. Are you familiar with HTMA testing? Okay.
Yeah, vaguely.
Okay. So for anyone who doesn't know, you test a sample of the hair, and based on the hair sample, we can see the mineral status, your level of toxins in the body. You can see how your thyroid is functioning, how your adrenals are functioning, even sex hormones, how your cells are operating at the cell level. So it is just, it's not a diagnostic tool, so we're not diagnosing anything, but it just gives a bigger picture of what's happening in the body. I look at blood labs also, but the body knows that the blood it's dangerous to have certain levels of toxins or minerals or just different anything in the blood. It's dangerous in the blood, so it'll push it to tissues.
Mm-hmm.
If there's too much, you can even see if there's too little. So using HTMA, we can understand, like I said, somebody's blood sugar handling, stress management, energy production, adrenal status, detoxification, thyroid status, and more. Minerals are literally the spark plugs of the body, and they facilitate reactions and are very involved in energy balance. So I know that you've had a lot of science as a pharmacist, but you can remember the sodium potassium pump that makes ATP. We're literally looking at that because sodium and potassium are two of the main minerals that we're measuring in the hair. So mineral balance is really important when we look at how the body's functioning, even at the cell level. When it comes to fertility, maintaining a proper mineral balance is essential. And when a woman has a baby, she loses 10% of her minerals, which is crazy. I love seeing women before and after pregnancy, because before, if you work on your mineral status, you can focus on eliminating toxins, building up your mineral stores, and balancing out your minerals so that you're not passing all this stuff down to your baby.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards, after you've had the baby, we really rebuild in balance because of the fact that you lost minerals, because of the fact that you're tired, waking up at all hours of the night, because your body is working hard, feeding this baby. Mineral depletion is basically associated with being very tired and worn out. You're just exhausted. So by supporting minerals, we can really improve how you feel pretty quickly. That's another reason I fell in love with it. And some of the ratios, so we look at the levels of the minerals, but also we look at ratios, so relationships between the minerals, because minerals are either antagonists or protagonists. So they work together or they fight each other, basically. And calcium and magnesium, that's the blood sugar ratio. So if it's high, if it's really high, then we can know that they're having high blood sugar, or if it's low, we know that they're having low blood sugar. We can look at it just as a trend. Again, it's not a diagnostic tool, but you can really see. And when I compare it with blood labs, it's usually pretty accurate too, which is kind of cool to see. Sodium and magnesium, that's the adrenal ratio. We can see if somebody has excessive adrenal function and they're tending towards anxiety or irritability. And if they're underactive, then they're having low blood pressure, hypoglycemia, salt cravings, more of that adrenal fatigue. I hate using that term, but more of that pattern. Calcium and potassium is your thyroid ratio. So we can see if you're hypothyroid or if you're hyperthyroid. And this is really looking at if the thyroid hormone can get into the cell, which is neat because sometimes people feel terrible on thyroid medication, but their labs look great. And it's because they're like way hyperthyroid on the HTMA. So we can change their oxidation, manipulate the minerals, and they feel better.
Mm-hmm.
So zinc to copper is really the sex hormones. And we can see if you have like hormone imbalances and reproductive issues. We can also see how you're utilizing protein or if you're eating enough protein and if your body's using it correctly. So there are several minerals that play critical roles in reproductive health. Zinc is really important, and that is involved in developing healthy eggs and sperm. So that can impact both men and women, which I'm sure that you know this about zinc. Magnesium, it's so widely discussed now because everybody's magnesium deficient. But that's important in hormone balance, egg maturation, and embryo implantation. And then selenium is important for optimal sperm function. And it also protects us against oxidative stress. And iron, which we talked about a little bit. But that can disrupt the menstrual cycle, lead to lack of ovulation. And then in men, it can affect sperm quality. So a hair tissue mineral analysis is really an easy test to run. And you can really get a lot of information from the test that you can take action on and honestly change the way that your body's functioning rather quickly.
So I'm curious because I've never, I've heard of the test, but I've never used it in my practice before. Since it's not diagnostic, if you're finding things are off, do you do further testing or do you make like lifestyle and nutrition changes first and then do you retest the hair test? Or just really out of curiosity, I'm wondering what that looks like.
I don't diagnose as a nutritional therapy practitioner.
Yeah.
So everything that I do is dietary, supplemental, or lifestyle changes. So it doesn't really impact how I create a protocol or make recommendations. There are times where I will see that somebody's adrenals are really struggling. I don't necessarily go and run like a cortisol saliva test or a Dutch or anything like that because I don't feel like I need to yet. I guarantee we would find that on those tests, but typically this is enough information to say, okay, we really have to slow down. We need to prioritize rest, stress management, stop doing the HIIT cardio, like that kind of stuff. And then supporting the adrenals supplementally, that usually, it has the impact for them. But based on somebody's oxidation rate, because you read the HTMA like a map, kind of. You don't look at individual minerals. And if you have a practitioner that you're working with who's doing an HTMA on you and is giving you individual minerals, run, because that is not necessarily how you want them to be looking at it. It's a big picture. And usually people are either slow oxidizers or fast oxidizers. And that shows us how quickly they're burning through nutrients. They need different dietary protocols. They need different levels of sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. And those 4 primary minerals, based on the HTMA, we can determine how much of those they need every day to then become more of a balanced oxidizer.
Yeah.
I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. Thank you. Because I mean, I like to think of it from the client's perspective of like financially paying for all of these tests. So that's good to know that like, you're just doing the test and then making changes based on that, like with lifestyle, nutrition, and supplements. Because I always try to think to myself, like what's in the best interest of the client. And the Dutch test, I mean, I've done that myself. It's so expensive. I love it. It gives so much information, but it's very expensive. So that's a very interesting tool to kind of look into more for myself for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm the same way with clients. And honestly, that's partially why I decided to focus so much on gut health, because it impacts so many foundations in the body. With hormones, you start there. So I have been a client of other practitioners in my, former life, and started with a Dutch. And then we ended up saying, oh, well, maybe we need to run a GI map. Taking action on the Dutch is not going to get you anywhere if your gut is not optimal. So that's why I really do try to be strategic with getting as close to the root cause as possible. And I do feel like mineral balancing, like your minerals are off for a reason, but at the same time, minerals are also passed down like 4 generations, like lead is from your great grandmother, I believe. So that is something that you have no control over. You were born with it, literally. Copper is the same way. I have copper imbalance. I gave it to both my daughters.
Yeah.
Pretty sure my mom has it, but she has not let me run a test on her. So yeah, so that is stuff that, yeah, I know what you're saying, but it is less expensive too than these other tests as well. So that's another reason why I like it.
And I think what you just shared about going down like the past 4 generations, that's even highlights more why you want to do this while you're trying to get pregnant, or if you are pregnant, like looking at this now. And that's what fascinates me. Like when I was finally pregnant, I just did all the research, and we have so much control and power about the things that we can do to really support our health, but baby's health and baby's future health, and even their children's health down the line. So that's like, I always try to like make that apparent for my clients trying to get pregnant. Like the work we're doing now, it's not just to get you pregnant. Like it is so you can pass this down to generation to take these like lifestyle changes with you throughout pregnancy and postpartum. It's just such a big picture.
Yeah, I definitely was not aware of this as much when I was pregnant with my first. She's 10 and a half. So it was a while ago, but with my second, I was much more aware of everything. And I think it's not well known unless you're looking for the information, unfortunately. And we have to work so much harder to reduce our exposure because of our water. That is my number one tip for improving your mineral status, is really filtering your water and adding trace mineral drops or electrolytes. That makes a big difference. And I don't want to make any other general recommendations because iron and copper, they're very individual. But just know that everything you come in contact with affects your body, in terms of toxins, because our world is so toxic compared to even when we were kids, and it's just such a burden on the body. So detox it's a buzzword that's trendy, but I'm not using it that way. It's like you were saying, the natural pathways of the body and the processes that your body does on a daily basis. Anything we can do to support that is super important.
Do you have a water filter that you like or that you use at home? Today's episode of Rising into Mindful Motherhood is proudly sponsored by the Confident Conception membership. Are you or someone you know on what feels like a never-ending journey to motherhood, facing an uphill battle of fertility challenges? I'm Dr. Katie, your podcast host, pharmacist, and integrative fertility coach with over a decade of experience. I've been where you are, and I understand the roller coaster of emotions and heartache. That's why I've created the Confident Conception membership, a program designed to help you address the real reasons behind fertility challenges. Like my client Elizabeth, who struggled with fertility for 9 years, having tried and failed other programs. She was in disbelief when just a couple of months into using my Confident Conception method, she finally got her first positive pregnancy test and welcomed her healthy baby boy this year. Using the Confident Conception method, we combine traditional medicine and energy healing to unlock your innate and abundant fertility potential. This isn't just about putting a Band-Aid on to cover up the physical symptom. It's about healing the energetic and physical root causes. As a member, you'll receive personalized guidance, bi-weekly live coaching calls, and become a part of a supportive community of like-minded women who truly understand what you're going through. We offer flexible payment options, plus our annual members receive exclusive savings and bonuses to accelerate their path to pregnancy. Don't let another month of frustration and overwhelm pass you by. As a special offer to our listeners, you can use the promo code PODCAST10 to receive 10% off the lifetime of your membership. Secure your spot now and expedite your journey to motherhood today by visiting www.yourempoweredfertility.com/membership to learn more and enroll. Together, we'll pave the way to your confident conception for a future filled with joy, unconditional love, and the pitter-patter of tiny feet. The link is in the show notes. Sign up today and your future self will thank you.
I do. So we built our house and we put in, it's
nice.
the Aquasana whole home filter. And then I always tell people there's no one perfect solution, in my opinion. I do have a reverse osmosis attached to that system, and I add electrolytes to my water so that I absorb the water, because that's the big complaint with RO is that you don't utilize the water because it lacks minerals.
Gotcha.
So in terms of other filters, Pure Effects is really good. I know a lot of people love Berkey as well. It just kind of depends on what you're looking for. But our water is super high in calcium. And when we needed to do something with the system. So I was drinking out of the tap and my calcium levels shot up and my thyroid was slowing, because that will slow down your thyroid if your calcium is really high. And it was not fun. So I'm really pretty picky about the water.
Yeah. We have well water that we don't drink, but we do have to get like the water from like those water things from the stores and stuff. Yeah. So I don't have a water filter that I use yet, but I just, it's so hard to decide because there's so many. But I like that you say, you know, there's no one perfect solution, because it really is different. I'm happy that we don't have city water with like fluoride and all of that, but still, I'm sure well water comes with its own negatives, but we don't drink that. But yeah, thanks for those recommendations. And I use electrolytes. Sometimes I just add it to my individual drink instead of like the whole water as well. So awesome. Great tips.
Yeah.
Thanks. So let's talk about blood sugar regulation, because I know that this is huge for people trying to get pregnant, especially if they're experiencing PCOS or maybe they have PCOS-like symptoms. I think just in general, Americans have so much sugar in their diet. Like, it is truly a big cause for concern, and it can just really wreak havoc on so many things in the body. So yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that and how it can further affect your gut health.
Yeah, blood sugar is huge. In addition to our food supply, you know, the standard American diet has a whole list of issues between the sugar, the high carbohydrate content, processed carbs that our body, I mean, these foods are so energy dense that our bodies don't know how to handle them. And so we expect them to, we see it at the store and think, oh, this is food. This is what I should buy. And our bodies do not know how to handle these foods. My background is in blood sugar. So for 7 years, I worked in diabetes care for Roche Diagnostics, who makes Accu-Check. And so I'm very well versed in blood sugar. I am no stranger to testing my blood sugar. I experiment with continuous glucose monitors. And aside from the food, stress is a huge piece. This was so apparent to me when I started having clients wear CGMs also. And I would get messages. I was late coming home and my blood sugar shot up and I hadn't eaten in 3 hours. Yeah. We are under so much more stress than we realize. So I think that also is having a big impact on the epidemic of blood sugar dysregulation in general. How it ties into gut health too, because this is sort of mind-blowing too. So the small intestine is where we absorb carbs. And when we eat carbs, the end result is glucose, right? So that obviously is supposed to raise our blood sugar levels, and we need insulin, which is a hormone produced by the pancreas, to help unlock that door for the sugar to go into the cells. So with PCOS and other conditions, you can get oftentimes insulin resistance, and that door just doesn't open. That key is not working anymore. So insulin resistance really can disrupt hormonal balance. It affects ovulation, can lead to irregular menstrual cycles. Again, I think a lot of people are very unaware that they have this, because most people would notice symptoms of low blood sugar, but your blood sugar, when it's high, in order to be symptomatic, has to be pretty high. And you don't notice it unless it's really high, like hospital type of high, and then it's too late at that point. So we're walking around with dysregulated glucose all day, having no idea about it. And I think the fact that we have CGMs as a tool, that's pretty neat, just to be able to even wear it for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, just to see your baseline and how different foods, activities, stress affects you is really cool. In terms of blood sugar, so the gut microbiome, they're finding that when you have dysbiosis, so that imbalance between good and bad bacteria, that can cause insulin resistance and metabolic dysfunction. So I don't know if you've heard about this study, but they did a study on rats, of course, and found that depending on the ratio of gut bacteria, it determined if the rat was thin or overweight.
Yes. It's like, yeah, that's definitely mind-blowing, and such, I think, a key piece to what is going on in America and in the world for anyone who, any countries that's experiencing like this diabetic overweight epidemic that's happening.
Totally. Yeah. We also produce short chain fatty acids in our gut, which relate to blood sugar regulation too. So short chain fatty acids are made in the gut through fermenting dietary fibers. So this is why we need carbs. A lot of people will go no carb, low carb, but we do need carbohydrates to have these substances in our bodies, and they have a positive impact on insulin sensitivity. So short chain fatty acids help improve the function of insulin receptors. They enhance glucose uptake by the cells and support better blood sugar regulation. They're basically a way to create GLP-1, which is what everyone, well, not everyone, but people are taking to Ozempic for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, blood sugar is huge. And honestly, if your blood sugar is dysregulated, it is a huge stress on the body. And insulin, cortisol, those are hormones. If those hormones are out of whack, so if your blood sugar is dysregulated, the body will not prioritize any other hormone production, will not prioritize sex hormones, thyroid hormones, nothing. So blood sugar is so foundational because it's life. The body thinks that it will die if blood sugar is dysregulated. So that's another reason why I focus a lot on it in my practice.
Yeah, and it can be so inflammatory too. So really just adding on like another chronic condition to kind of like hop on board. And like you said, since so many people are like, I can't remember the statistics, but some like crazy percentage that so many people are even unaware that they have, insulin resistance, and then they kind of avoid or dismiss some of their symptoms that their body might be giving them, and then however many years down the road, it's like, oh, now you have this autoimmune disorder. And it's just this like vicious cycle, because if you don't have the right team that's really looking at the root cause, then that's what you're living with for the rest of your life. And probably other things are just going to be tacked on, and other meds for other symptoms. And it's just, I'm so happy to see that it does seem like there is this really big awakening and awareness around health, more so than in the past. So I do think people are becoming more aware, and that is really one benefit of social media and podcasts is we have so much information at our fingertips, like that, following, certain people who are educated in definitely like fertility and motherhood. Like that's where I really started getting interested in so many things, because I wasn't even aware of it before. But once you have that like awareness, and if you do more research or you work with a coach who's, has experience in it, you can change so much in your life.
Totally. I did not have anyone guiding me when I was younger, and that's why I had so many health struggles.
Yeah.
My mom was a nurse, was very educated in the health field, but at the same time, I think she had a bit of, I don't know, a biased view on me, or maybe denial, I guess, and didn't know how to help me as much, I guess, as she could have.
Yeah.
But with that said, even though I had PCOS from a very young age, I was definitely developing metabolic syndrome. Looking back, I was very overweight. Um, no one was talking to me about nutrition. No one was talking to me about blood sugar. It's a very different time now,
Yeah.
which is great, and we have so much more information. But at
Mhm.
the same time, the food is so processed, so half, it's just lacking nutrition, but not lacking energy and calories. So we're devoid of nutrients, but yet, we're overfed, I
Mhm.
guess. And that is, sad to me, because we both have young kids, and their generation is really struggling already at
Mhm.
such a young age. So, yeah, I hope that this continues with the forward focus of being, healthy, and trying to prevent things before it's too late,
Mhm.
or before experiencing negative health outcomes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think something that's important to remember is like our parents and their parents, and they did the best that they knew. And even for us in our generation, like you said, you weren't really aware of this with your first pregnancy. So it's not about being, shameful about yourself and what you did. I mean, I didn't know anything about HTMA either. It's just like learning, and then, taking action for the future. And whatever your journey has been, I truly believe it's for a reason. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're listening to it for a reason. So you could get even just one little nugget of information to change your life or someone else's life and your family. So just having like grace and compassion with
Yeah.
that, because nobody's perfect. Like I am constantly learning
Yeah.
and evolving, and I'm sure you are, and everybody is. So yeah, that's just something to remember. And I forgot to mention this earlier. For blood sugar regulation, I love recommending people who are trying to get pregnant to have their fasting insulin and glucose tested in an A1C, because you never know, like when you are pregnant, and if you get the glucola test, like
Mhm.
you're basically finding out that you have this insulin resistance so far along into your pregnancy. And like it's not a common practice to test for at least an A1C or even vitamin D or thyroid. Like I remember when I was going to the office initially, like I asked for these tests, and they were like, we don't normally do that. And I'm like, cool, well, I want them. So and I did the CGM for my blood sugar. Like I'm not taking glucola, so it's not going to happen. I was having a very like a low carb, not too low, but like a lower carb diet. And I knew that my body could definitely have like a false positive. But the
Mhm.
CGM, I think, is just so much more informational, anyways. Like it just really gives you such a beautiful picture. Like you can eat oatmeal with something with protein and high in fat, and you may be fine. But for me, no matter what I ate with oatmeal, I would have a blood sugar spike.
Mhm. And that can
So
be related to food sensitivities too.
yeah, so that's a great point to make.
Yeah. And some people, and this is a whole nother conversation, but become protein adapted too. And protein can be insulin demanding as well. And so they're trying to figure out, why is my blood sugar dropping? Why am I having reactive hypoglycemia with a meal that had carbs and protein?
Mhm.
It's individual, but it can be related to food too,
Mhm.
specific to the person. But CGMs give you so much more information. My sister is pregnant right now. She's due in July.
Mhm.
And so I'm reliving vicariously through her pregnancy, just remembering the glucose tolerance test. And I think it was only, do they do a 1 hour or a 2 hour typically? Do you know?
I think it depends on where you are. Maybe I think it's one.
I think it's just one. And I was telling her, you should
Yeah.
probably want the 2 hour, because one
Mhm.
doesn't really
Yeah.
show, it only shows you how high your blood sugar goes. And that is very dependent on your transit time in your gut. Granted, it's a drink, so it should be pretty quick, but still,
Yeah.
who knows? Would you drop low then afterwards? Would it keep going up at
Mhm.
the second hour? It's very generic, I'll say. So CGMs are, I mean, I know that's the glucose tolerance test is what insurance pays for, and that's understandable, but you
Yeah.
can get a meter
Yeah.
for $20 at the pharmacy and do your own testing an
Mhm.
hour after a meal, 2 hours, even 3 hours. And that gives you so much information.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know about most states, but like in New York, you don't even need a prescription to get a monitor anymore. I think you need one for the CGM, but
Mhm.
to get a monitor, you don't even need a prescription.
No, here in Indiana, you don't either.
So I would love to dive into what are, let's see, I'll say five. What are five simple, easy tips that people can do to start really loving on their gut?
Okay. So these might be too simple, but
That's okay.
they're easy. So, number one, chew your food. That sounds so basic, but we have gotten into the habit of rushing through meals or
Mhm.
being distracted, scrolling on phones, working, driving while we're eating, and we don't chew as well as we should. So it sounds very old timey, like something you'd hear from your grandma, but chewing your food 20 to 30 times each bite until it's the consistency of like a smoothie, we want to do that before
Mhm.
swallowing, because that not chewed up food can cause holes in the gut permeability that we talked about, and that has a whole list of issues associated with it that we reviewed. But um, chewing your food, just, I always tell my kids, your stomach does not have teeth, so you need to chew your food before you swallow it. So
Mhm.
that's number one. Number two, slow down and get in a relaxed mindset and try to eat in a relaxed environment. So we really need to be in the parasympathetic rest and digest state when we eat. Um, if we are not, which oftentimes we don't realize that we aren't in a parasympathetic state. Some people are never in it. They're living their lives day in and day out. And when you are in fight or flight, your body is prioritizing everything except digestion. It's trying to survive. So blood is being sent to the brain, the heart, the extremities in case you need to run from a lion or go into action or something. So we really want the blood flow, the nutrients to be sent to the digestive system. So sitting in a relaxed environment. My favorite thing too that's easy is taking digestive bitters, and you can get those over the counter. I really like Wise Woman Herbals and Dr. Shade's #9. Those are my favorites, but the bitter taste, bitter foods get our body in that parasympathetic state too.
Mm-hmm.
Taking a few deep breaths before your meals, and if it feels right, engaging in a gratitude practice helps as well.
Mm-hmm.
My second tip. Third tip would be avoiding a lot of liquid around your meals. So especially water, like that doesn't have nutrients in it. We really want to drink water away from our meals because we don't want to dilute our stomach acid. So we talked about this before, but stomach acid is very important to break down protein and your food. And we need adequate amounts to break down the food. So we don't want to dilute it by drinking too much with our meals.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of digestion, and this also relates to everything with inflammation and stress, avoid franken foods, avoid inflammatory foods, focus on whole foods. That is super important. It allows your body to get so many more nutrients than we realize. And like I said, when your body is given the right tools, it knows what to do, I believe. So whole foods are big. And then hydration too is so important. So drinking your water, making sure you have electrolytes added so you can absorb and use the water. With our gastric juices, our stomach acid, everything that goes into digesting, water is a cofactor. So we really need enough water to have our digestive system working properly and to be eliminating daily. So if you're constipated, water is super important as well to get everything moving and keep it moving through the body.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Yeah, I think the simpler, the better, especially for anyone starting out. And I think even like chewing your food slowly and using digestive bitters, like doesn't that even like signal to the body to start creating like the hydrochloric acid in the stomach and all of that?
Yeah. So digestion starts in your brain, not in your mouth. And it starts from even thinking about your food. So I love when clients have a garden, even if it's just herbs or a windowsill garden, a pot of dill, whatever it is, because they are having a part in growing that food. And if they're cooking it, their body is going to digest it better because they're thinking about the food, that the digestive juices are flowing, and they digest it better. It seems crazy, but it just, the closer you can be to your food, the better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Especially like now that we're in the summer, depending on where you live and you're limited to that, like having your own little garden or even shopping locally, farmers markets. I mean, there's typically veggie stands, like at least around me, they're like all over the place. But when you do it yourself, like, like this wasn't sprayed, or the quality of the soil, because I know it's like some crazy amount, like we have to eat like so many apples or oranges today to even get to the nutrient quality like when your parents were alive. It's so wild. I mean, and that probably even goes for organic food. So when you grow it yourself and you can tend to the soil, there's just so many benefits to it.
Yeah, and gardening is great for your microbiome too.
Yeah, get in that dirt.
Yep, definitely.
Love it. Well, I know you have a freebie for the audience. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so if you head to my website, you can download the free beginner's guide to gut health. It has a lot of practical, easy tips for digestion, improving your digestion. The tips I mentioned are included in there. And then I also have some troubleshooting, like tips and tricks if you run into bloating, gas, constipation, what to do and how to overcome that.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you. And where can the audience learn more and connect with you? And I will be dropping all of these links in the show notes as well.
Okay, great. My Instagram handle is gut.repair.nutritionist. You can find me there. And I also have a website that is foundationsnutritionalwellness.com.
Beautiful. Would you like to close with any final thoughts for the listeners?
I just want to thank you for having me. I understand this work that you're doing is great. It's phenomenal and it's needed. And for everyone listening, if you are going through a fertility struggle, hang in there, because I know that it can be challenging. I watched my sister go through it, and there is hope, though. I believe that you can understand your body and work with your body and have the outcome that you want.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for being here and just sharing your story and your passion with us, Kelly.
You're welcome. Thanks again, Katie.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Rising into Mindful Motherhood podcast. If this episode resonated with you or gave you an aha moment, stop what you're doing right now and write a review. This simple act of kindness helps me get this podcast out to connect with as many women as I possibly can. I also have a special offer. If you send me a screenshot of your review, I will take $250 off one of my premium coaching containers. Let me know what resonated with you the most and why. So connect with me in my free Facebook community or tag me on Instagram. You'll find both listed below. Thanks again from the bottom of my heart for tuning in to this episode, and I'll see you next time.